From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal, an eventful week in Alabama politics as we approach the Labor Day weekend. We'll start with the arrest and resignation of State Representative David Cole earlier this week. The Huntsville Republican was charged with voting fraud after he allegedly voted in a precinct in which he did not reside. Cole's residency had been in question since before the November election, when he ran for an open house seat, and had been the subject of both a party and court challenge. He will plead guilty to a charge of voting in an unauthorized location, according to a plea agreement filed in state court. On Wednesday, he submitted his resignation from the legislature to House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter. I'll talk with Speaker Ledbetter in more detail about this situation later in the show. A big infrastructure announcement this week from Governor Kay Ivey. She joined state and local officials in Hoover to announce major upgrades to interstates in the greater Birmingham area. Among the projects are a roughly 3.6-mile expansion of Interstate 59 northeast of the city, from Interstate 459 to Chalkville Mountain Road. Also, a new Interstate 459 interchange in Hoover will be built, connecting to the Ross Bridge area. But the big one is the widening of Interstate 65 from Alabaster south about 8 miles to Calera. That, of course, is a frustratingly congested stretch of road, especially during the beach tourist season. All told, the projects will cost the state $500 million. The Interstate 65 project alone has a $300 million price tag, putting in perspective the scope of that kind of work. Ivey said these projects have been in the works for about 2 years and are possible because of the 2019 gas tax and infrastructure plan known as Rebuild Alabama. It's been a rocky rollout for the implementation of medical marijuana in Alabama ever since the law legalizing it passed in 2021. This week, the Medical Cannabis Commission voted to pause the process of moving forward with licenses for companies seeking to do work in the medical marijuana industry. This after a district judge ordered a stay to review yet another lawsuit against the commission, this one about an alleged violation of the Open Meetings Act. A hearing on that lawsuit is scheduled for next Wednesday. After the vote, Commission Chairman Rex Vaughn said he was still optimistic that medical marijuana products could be available to patients by the end of the year.
Certainly it will be another delay for us that we would choose not to if we had an option, but we're trying to concur with the judge's wishes at this point. And Judge Anderson he's issued his own state, so we pretty much have to concur with his wishes and his directives.
So this means there'll be a third awarding of licenses and
at least, because maybe you can't go as far as re-awarding, but we've put a stay on our current list of licensees. So if that list stays the same is yet to be seen. But yes, we'll have to come back and do that for another vote.
Thousands of state employees commute to downtown Montgomery every day, and this Tuesday they were greeted with detours and delays after a wreck along Interstate 65 caused a tractor trailer to collide with a downtown bridge. That caused a huge fire, inflicting significant damage. Randy Scott reports on the implications for the state and its workforce.
Drivers faced this scene Tuesday morning near downtown Montgomery, a raging fire off I-85 South under the Perry Street Bridge, the result of a collision involving 3 vehicles and an 18-wheeler.
Montgomery Police was dispatched and found an 18-wheeler crashed into the southbound side pillar of Perry Street overpass over the I-85. That 18-wheeler was ablaze. The driver, Eldon Abram, was able to exit the vehicle with only minor injuries.
The injuries were no worse than they were based off of the normal situation we run into in incidents like that. There were a lot of things at play that really saved the lives of those citizens that were involved in that incident.
Traffic on I-85 was shut down. First responders checked to make sure no other injuries were missed, then examining the severe damage to the bridge, which had citizens in harm's way.
The impact from that 18-wheeler, coupled with the intense heat from the fire, caused major damage to South Perry Street Bridge and its support, causing the closure of the southbound highway and the overhead bridge.
Department of Transportation officials say between 100,000 and 200,000 vehicles pass through this intersection on a daily basis. So to avoid having big problems in the future, law enforcement officials, first responders, emergency management, and even state officials are coming together to find a solution to this tragedy as soon as possible.
Right now, our focus is on to repairing the bridge. We do have contractors on site to begin emergency repairs as identified as we finalize permanent plans for repairs.
And travelers will have changes to deal with.
We do ask that nobody or vehicle goes onto the South Perry Street Bridge. So that bridge is closed and will remain closed completely to all pedestrian and vehicle traffic until final repairs can be made.
This incident brings officials who deal with public safety together to handle real-time drama.
There have been people from Alabama Emergency Management, Alabama Department of Transportation, Alabama Department of Environmental Management, MPD, ALEA, MFR, which is Montgomery Fire Rescue, brought together to try to work on how we can rectify the situation and help our community as best we can.
For Capital Journal, I'm Randy Scott.
Jimmy Baker, Chancellor of the Alabama Community College System, recently offered an update on the vast two-year college network and its myriad education and training offerings. Karen Goldsmith reports on the state of the Alabama Community College System.
This year, Alabama's community college system is celebrating its 60th year. At a lunch meeting, their chancellor, Jimmy Baker, gave the system's first State of the Community College address.
The Alabama Community College System is the best vehicle. In my opinion, we offer academic pursuit, but in the course of that, it's our intent that we provide something to every student.
He shares what that something is.
We are committed to this proposition that when a person comes to our program, whatever it may be, we intend for them to acquire at least some limited skill.
Chancellor Baker also noted that Alabama's community colleges are going against a national trend.
Nationally, the enrollment in community colleges is declining. I'm here to tell you today, in Alabama, the community college system enrollment is increasing every semester.
And this increase is not by happenstance.
It is because we have a very deliberate plan, which includes software and salesmanship and everything else. But we have a very deliberate plan that utilizes numerous databases and other kinds of things to go about the business of recruiting students to the point of even having telephone banks and people that are constantly in contact with students.
For Capital Journal, I'm Karen Goldsmith.
Sadly, that is Karen's last report for Capital Journal. She is leaving APT after 12 years and moving to Atlanta. I'll sit down with her here at the desk for a proper send-off later in the show. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Joining me next is State Representative Nathaniel Ledbetter from Rainsville, Speaker of the Alabama House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
It's good to be here as always. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Good to have you on. Good for a good time to get caught up as we're in between sessions here. Let's talk about State Representative David Cole, arrested on charges of voting fraud, now has resigned his seat in the legislature. There seems to be a plea agreement. What can you? I know that there's plenty you can't say about this. What can you tell me from the Speaker's perspective?
What we've seen this week had come out, and we don't qualify candidates. The party does. So the party, I think, had some conversation during the qualification. They decided to put him on the ballot, and they did. Not only that, it went through the Secretary of State not once but twice, and they affirmed what the party had said. So we have this come up periodically throughout the session, and especially in the beginning of the session. And most of the time between the state party and the Secretary of State, it gets worked out. I mean, that's just how the process works. It doesn't have anything to do with the body. It starts off with whichever party it is, being Republican or Democrat, and then they go through the process. The Secretary of State certifies those. So that's kind of where it was at. We'd heard our attorneys had heard that the circuit court in Madison County was wanting to try to get some information together to see where it was going, and they were advised by our staff attorneys. You gotta do it before January the 10th because that's when orientation is, and that's when the certification will happen.
Oh, this is going back.
This is going back. Yeah. So that didn't happen. They didn't get it to us, and I think they did the deposition later on during the session. And they didn't get those depositions to us till I think it was the 9th of June, which at that time we'd done sine die. And by Constitution, we can't do anything until we're in session one. The other thing is there has to be a written statement from a sitting member to challenge the election after he's seated. So that's never happened. It's not happened till yet. So we can't change the Constitution. I mean, that's how it is. And so I think, looking at it, we were always mindful of it, knew it was there. If it ever come back, we would see what we had to do and had conversation with our legal team to see what the right steps would take. And they've done a great job. I mean, they advised us every step of the way on the issue when it was coming up, and we thought he had taken care of all of what he was supposed to. And we got 105 members. It's kind of hard to say where any of them live. I mean, they have to, whatever they're given to their particular parties, that's what they have to go by, and I suspect that's what happened here. Mm-hmm. But, the fact of the matter is we didn't even receive those depositions after we'd signed he died. And then once that happened, we didn't really know where the process was at that time. So I think from our standpoint, we kind of followed what the law said.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that voting fraud, election integrity has been an issue that y'all have, championed, pushed. In this last session, it was this whole ballot harvesting thing, trying to restrict who can, handle another person's ballot and all that kind of stuff. And it's been said that it's coming back this year, or next year rather. Do you think that this situation sort of hampers those efforts? Because, I can just see Democrats saying it on the floor like, well, no, this is what real voting fraud is. Are you concerned at all about that?
No, the thing about it is if it's a good bill, it's a good bill. If it's something we need to do, we need to do it. And nobody is going to agree 100% of the time. And there's going to be conversation on both sides. But I think, if you look at the bill and what it does, I do think that there'll probably be some language put in it to clean it up a little bit. And if that happens, we'll see it come back. And, it works on both sides. I mean, it goes both ways. And as Speaker, we serve the whole body, but Democrats and Republicans. So, I think there'll be conversation, but there would have been anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some issues. Down at BCA, I heard Jimmy Rain talk about an issue that I know you have championed. That is developing more industrial sites, right? The argument being we've kind of run out. We've committed a lot of our current industrial sites to projects, and that we need to be developing more of them. It sounded a lot like the Seeds Act that passed last session, something that you said was close to your heart. Talk about why that's important, and were you listening there and thinking, hey, yeah, this is exactly what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think he did a great job, and he's exactly right. And that was the Seeds Act was put in place because of that. Alabama, because of our success, we've run out of industrial sites. It's a good thing to have that kind of success, but we've also got to create some new sites. The mega site in Etowah County is the only one I know that's certified at this point. So I know Secretary Canfield and his staff will be working on finding a new location. I mean, you think about it, a company's not going to come to a location if they don't have everything ready. These companies want to get the ground running, and if they don't have the utilities, the infrastructure that they need, the good chance is you're not going to get them. So that's why it's so important for us to continue to develop land for industrial recruitment, and the SEEDS Act does exactly that. You know, we've put millions of dollars into creating new industrial sites, and I think within the next few months we're going to see that come to be, and if it's going to be a strong point for Alabama advocating for new jobs.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about education. It's the start of a new school year. I know I've heard you many times talk about how improving education is got to be at the top of everybody's list in terms of public policy in the state. And you know, look, there have been some, you know, significant reforms passed in the last few years. I'm thinking of Literacy Act, Numeracy Act, all the funding, record funding for education. Are you hopeful in talking with, you know, Chairman Garrett and some others and Superintendent that some of these reforms, some of these bills that y'all have passed, you might start to see some more tangible results this school year?
Yeah, I think so. I think we seen them last year with the Literacy Act. You know, it's one of those things where the number of failing schools had reduced. I mean, we had in certain areas we had 26 failing schools as far as reading, and they're down to 6. So I don't think there's any question about, you know, it's working. And to see it in the Numeracy Act, I believe the results will be the same. And once we start to see those numbers improve, we're going to see our numbers improve overall. So I feel like we're heading in a good direction. There's some more work to be done. There's no question. And, you know, there's more ideals out there that we'll look at, and certainly school choice is one of them. I mean, we expanded what we did this year with the AAA. We've given school choice to military families, and so I think you'll see more of that, and it's not detrimental to public schools. You know, we want to continue to support public schools and make them as strong as we possibly can, and maybe there's opportunities that we can look at going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that announcement from the governor, that op-ed she ran about, you know, school choice for next session. Sounds pretty interesting. She also ran that op-ed about the Literacy Act, saying, hey, you know, this is the year that the accountability provisions, the holdback provisions, if you will go into effect. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see legislation trying to extend that yet again. But she seemed to really push back against that, saying, no, we've got to stop it now.
Yeah, we've extended it one time, and I think, and that was behind COVID.
Right.
And it's probably rightfully so. But I think now we're at a point where we've got to, if we really are going to improve literacy, we've got to be able to say, okay, you need more work. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, every one of us in certain areas, there's certain things that we can do to improve ourselves. So I don't think education's any different. You know, when you need a little bit more work and you can hold back a year and get that and catch up with everybody else, I think it's good for you. It's good for the teachers and everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hear you talk about this and her as well. You know, passing them along without those reading skills is really a disservice to the students. I think that's a good point. Looking forward to the next session. I know it feels like we've just gotten out of this last one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because of the special. It was kind of grueling.
Yeah.
But looking toward it, you know, we're always searching for what's going to happen. You've got this ad hoc committee that's been meeting about gambling.
Right.
Essentially kind of testing the waters, feeling, okay, what might be feasible for the House to pass on lottery, on regulating casinos, on the sports betting thing. What's the latest you've heard from them, and do you see something, a product coming maybe for next session?
Yeah, I think, you know, they've done a tremendous job, and Chairman Witt has really worked hard at it. His committee's worked hard. I hadn't got the final report. He has given me updates. I think the most shocking thing to me, you know, we've talked about this last time, and there was like 30 illegal operations maybe. Well, by the time we got through, somebody said, well, maybe there's 70 now. And
are these like little bingo?
Yeah,
I don't say bingo. They're really slot machines.
And some of them's behind shop and goes or quick marks or stuff like that. And come to find out, one county's got more than 67. So one county had more than what we thought was in the state. So what we're finding, just about every county has got some illegal gaming operation. And he has worked really hard. He's went with the sheriffs and said, "Can you show me something? Can you tell me?" And he's had a pretty good response from some of the sheriffs around the state. But the problem with it is now, where we're at today, if we do not do something about it and regulate it, then all we're doing is enabling illegal gambling. And it's gotten so rampant until we do something about it. It's a little scary because it's almost an organization that's going to be a legal organization, like a crime organization that's running these operations. And it's without true regulations, without a commission to kind of support it and try to stop them, it's going to continue to grow. And listen, let's be honest, there's more out there than what the Attorney General can address. So I do think with regulations, there's got to be an enforcement piece with that. And
he's kind of playing whack-a-mole, right?
That's it. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing, and it's not easy to try to control. I mean, with no different what the penalties are, they can shut down, take their machines out. 2 weeks later, they'll be running again in the same stores because the penalties just aren't stiff enough. So I think regulation is a big key to it. And let's face it, we've got gambling already in our state. We have had for a number of years. I think it's time that we regulated it, quit giving the illegals the opportunity to really take money from more and more citizens in Alabama, because that's what's happening.
Well, also in the department of, what year is it? Ethics reform is being talked about. I say reform, really revisions to the reforms that happened in 2010, because there have been complications. There have been some confusion around this. Representative Simpson has really, in a really kind of surprising way to me, opened up this issue, because it can be politically fraught. Anytime you touch the ethics code, you can be accused of weakening it or whatever. But he's kind of taken a transparent approach to this. In your conversations with him, do you see this coming up in the next session, and the ethics code being, tweaked, clarified to everybody's satisfaction?
Yeah, I think one of the things when I took over the Speaker's office, we had some issues we need to try to fix. And I think we started that last year by passing the strongest fentanyl bill probably in the country. We did it with the adoption process that hadn't been touched in 30 years. We've talked about the gambling issues that's been going on for decades, and now with the ethics. And well, the problem with the ethics law, it hadn't been touched in 30 years until 2010. And then when they did it in quite a haste, and sometimes that causes some issues. And I think if you talk to any of those people that voted to pass it, if they could go back, they would tell you, we should have done this different, or we should have done that different. And when Chairman Simpson talked to me about it, I think the whole thing was the transparency, because nobody knows what it does right now. We don't know where the gray area is, because it seems to always move. So if he's able to put a piece of legislation together that gives it real transparency, where people really know what you can and you can't do, and it's fair to everybody, then I think it strengthens the bill. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many people affected in Alabama because of this law. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher. It doesn't matter if you're a football coach. It doesn't matter. You're affected by this law. I think he had looked at the numbers, some 350,000 Alabamians and their families are affected by this law. So I think we have got to give the people in the state something that's transparent enough so they know what they can and can't do. And listen, he chairs that committee. Cynthia Almond is a vice chair. Both of them are very sharp legal minds. There is some legislation that our council has done in the past, and I think they're looking at that. So I feel pretty good about it. I know this is one of those issues that some people want to stay away from. We don't want, but it's messed up. So if it's messed up, why not fix it? And that's kind of where I'm at and what I see. And I think we'll have something that we can vote on. We'll see how it goes. I think there's got to be a lot of education to our members, and let them understand the process, and let them see and give them a chance to have input on what they'd like to see.
Well, while I've got you, we're running out of time, but you were just elected chairman, or the chair-elect, of the Council of State Governments for the South. Folks may recognize this as Southern Legislative Conference, right?
Right.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And am I correct that means the conference will come back to Alabama?
It will.
What year?
It will be in 25.
Okay.
So it won't be next year, but the next. And we're excited about that. I mean, what a better way than to bring the 15 southern states into Alabama and show them the progress we've made. I mean, Alabama's a different state, in my opinion, now than it was just 10 or 15 years ago, with the progress we've made in job creation, and with everything that's going on over the state, with the manufacturing jobs that's been created in automotive and shipbuilding and commercial airlines and the engineers in Huntsville. And I'm excited about it. And it's certainly an honor to have your colleagues from across the 15 southern states to elect you to be in that position. That's humbling, to say the least. And so we're looking forward to it, and I think it's a good opportunity just for us to show what Alabama really is.
You're going to start hearing from, if you haven't already, from all the different locations in Alabama that might want to host this thing.
Well, the good thing about this, Todd, is that we don't get to choose.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
so it's out of your hands.
That's right. The organization chooses, so they've already put out the bids, and I think they've narrowed it down to maybe 3 different cities. And they did show me what 3 cities, but I'm not going to say right now.
Is Fort Payne one of them?
Fort Payne, unfortunately, Fort Payne is not one of them. But I don't think we got enough hotel rooms.
I understand. Well, we're out of time, but Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure as always.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Joining me next is State Superintendent Eric Mackey. Dr. Mackey, thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here with you.
Well, it's the start of a new school year, so I was hoping to have you on the show to talk about that. You've been traveling around the state. I've seen the pictures from social media, lots of different visits to schools. Tell me, are you feeling some optimism at the start of the new school year? Is there a reason to be optimistic?
Yeah, absolutely. We feel really good about this school year. I have had the opportunity to get into a lot of schools this fall. The governor has been going to a lot of schools. She and I have gone to some schools together. And there is definitely a feeling of optimism and revitalization that was kind of missing the last few years since COVID. COVID definitely, it not only changed things, obviously physical health and how we have to think about things in school, but it really made people kind of, a little worried, a little tense. We don't feel that this year. Now, that being said, I have to remind folks we do have a little uptick in COVID at the beginning of the school year. We've seen already lots of student absences, so we're worried that this might be a bad flu year, it might be a bad RSV year because this kind of things are not going well here at the beginning. But it's those are things we've always dealt with. We've not seen the severe cases that we had a few years ago. So overall, good optimism. It's good to be in schools.
Well, this comes on the heels of summer, and I would say, is it fair to say that this summer we had the most robust summer learning programs really ever, between reading, math, really intensive learning in the summer. How did that go? Were you pleased with the rollout of some of those summer learning programs?
We're still collecting data on some of those summer programs. It's been an interesting mix this year. We offered more opportunities this year than we have in the past. But we see that in a lot of communities, the uptake was actually down. So in many communities, they had fewer students who participated in summer reading camps and math camps than in the years past. Now, part of that could be because we also saw record numbers of people going on vacations. So after a couple of years of people not taking vacations, we heard from parents that they're like, look, I'm taking my kids on a vacation this summer. Yeah. And so we've had that struggle. We knew that was something we would always struggle with because during that intensive summer reading and math camps, we need those students, especially students who are maybe on the edge or who are behind their peers or who certainly if they're below grade level, we need them in that summer enrichment program. But, we did have thousands of students go. We're collecting all that data now. We'll have it by mid-October. Our target is for the October state board meeting to be able to look more intensely at summer participation. But, it just varied by community.
Sure.
But now I want to speak about the quality of the programs. Never been more excited about the excitement we see among teachers, the work that they are doing in the summer to do math and reading enrichment. As you said, it's the best we've ever had. We think it'll be even better next year, and next year, of course, is the year it counts.
Yeah, and working with communities, knowing, best practices, how to get that buy-in next time around. I want to switch to the Literacy Act. This is, I was talking with Speaker Ledbetter about, legislature has passed these laws recently, Literacy Act, Numeracy Act, and there's some optimism that really now we're going to start seeing, a lot more gains being made. But obviously, this is the first year that the accountability provision of the Literacy Act will be implemented at the end of the school year. In layman's terms, holdback provision if you're not at reading proficiently. A couple of things to ask about this. Number one, in speaking with Speaker Ledbetter on the heels of the governor's op-ed saying, hey, no more delays. We've had 2 years basically of a delay of this holdback provision. The speaker said the same thing. He didn't want to see any bills delaying it. Heard the same thing from the Senate. So there seems to be alignment, political alignment, that further delays of this accountability provision won't happen. Does that help you at all, and does that help local administrators with just some certainty, knowing that yes, this is actually coming?
Yeah, I think that I've heard no talk from anybody about delaying again. I think that was certainly the wise thing to do. I know the governor felt pretty strongly about it as we came out of COVID, that we kind of get solid footing first, and then through the legislative process they decided to add another year, make it a 2-year delay. But this year, that's over. I don't see anything changing that. It is good for us that we know where we are this year. I feel really good about where we are with the interventions and the preventions. Remember, we've always talked about it's prevention over retention. So for those students who are reading below grade level, which we know, and the governor mentioned in her op-ed, it's about 12,000 students. It has been about 12. Obviously, I can't predict what this year it'll be, but we think it'll probably be in that 9 to 10 to 12,000 student range. Very similar to what other states have done who've looked at this same retention provision. And I think it's time. I think we certainly have to make sure that students who are moving on to 4th grade are reading on grade level, and that's a big deal to me. Has been since the beginning. I know there's still going to be a lot of talk around and some contention around whether retention is the right move or not. And that's the same way across the nation. People are still debating that. Even in states that have been doing it for 10 years, they're still debating whether that's the right move. But the fact is, it is the law. We're going to do that this year. And then we have to remind people there are other ways for students to be promoted too. So first, we just give a standard test, and on that reading test, they're either on or above grade level or below grade level. Then they can go to summer reading camp, as we've talked about already, and they can test again at the end of reading camp. There's also a portfolio option for our students who are below grade level and have special needs. There's an option for their IEP team to get involved too. So there are these special provisions out there, and many students may get promoted that way. They may go to summer reading camp, take the test again, and then score better and move on. But right now, we don't need uncertainty. So we're moving along as if everything's on track, and I think everything is on track to put the retention piece in place this year.
Mm-hmm. Of course, once it happens, let's fast forward to May or June or whatever it is, and those parents start getting those notices that, hey, we've got, something's going to happen here. That's when it really starts to happen. It starts to get real, and I'm just imagining politically, all right, some parents might have a problem with the principal and take their problem to the superintendent. They take their problem to the legislature and all that. What would your message be to that whole chain of command about maybe having the patience to say, look, we've got to allow this process to move through, and just a few complaints, maybe not, it doesn't mean you got to change the law.
Well, you just have to be careful to make sure that those students are ready to be successful. So it's always about students, again, prevention over retention. But when it comes down to it, if a student's reading below grade level, and of course we have teams of statisticians and groups of teachers who get together, and they help us determine what grade level is. Ultimately, the board decides that. But you know, if they're below grade level, that means they're going to really struggle in middle school and high school. So the key is to focus on what's best for those children. How do we help them get ready to be successful in middle school and high school? Even students who are right on the bubble, who are on grade level, but they're not, you know, they're barely on grade level, they're going to struggle in middle school and high school. And that's why this year we just recently had the state school board retreat, and we're proposing to put money for the first time in the budget for middle school reading support to help these students who are in middle school, who did meet the gains, who are on grade level, but they're still a low-level reader, and they need extra support so that they can become a stronger reader as they go into high school. So there's multiple layers to it, but we certainly don't need to turn back the clock.
I see. I wanted to ask you about turnaround schools. I hear this term a lot. I know the governor had her sort of initiative on this and has had this focus. We hear the term a lot, but what does it really mean when a school is, you know, identified as a turnaround school? What goes into that? What extra intensive focus is put on there? How does it really work?
Yeah, probably one of the most innovative things Alabama's ever done. And the governor did it herself. She said, we're going to do this turnaround school model. So the governor looked into what we were already doing with what we call CSI schools, or comprehensive school improvement. And we have 4 pillars to school improvement, things that need to happen in a school for that school to really get better, from leadership to having high quality teachers and materials, professional development. And she said, let's make sure we focus on our most high need schools. So we worked together in our office to identify 15 schools that are consistently low performing. They're all extremely high poverty communities. Most of them have they have other issues in the community. Many of them have high incidences of crime, drugs, low employment, just lots of problems in the community. And of course the children, they're not school problems, they're community problems that those children are absorbing at home and then they're bringing them to school. So what do we do to help these communities have better schools? And for our part, the governor, of course, worked with the legislature and got a $10 million grant. So in these 15 schools, are each getting, you know, not $1 million apiece, but pretty close to it. They're hiring interventionists. In some cases, they're hiring additional counselors, mental health therapists. They're hiring security people. They're doing things like walking kids back and forth, things that they knew needed to be done in those communities, but they didn't have the money for those things. So we've invested the money. Secondly, we've invested additional professional development. Here at the department, we've hired an administrator just to oversee this program and some additional support to go out and help these schools get the things that they need. And again, some of them are hiring additional people. They're bringing in retired teachers. They're bringing in auxiliary teachers to really bring community supports around these children. And then lastly, you know, we've partnered. We've got DHR involved. We've got early childhood involved, trying to make sure that every child who lives in one of these communities can get into a pre-K program through our early childhood department. We've been able to get law enforcement involved. We've gotten the arts community involved. We've never had this kind of investment from the arts community saying we're going to go in and make sure that all these children have our arts programs. I mean, those are things that these schools, these families could not afford. But I think it's a good initiative. We keep telling people, the governor's made it clear she didn't want to go in and just kind of tweak things one time and then just abandon these children. This is a long-term effort throughout the rest of her administration. We're committed to it. And we're already seeing increases in scores in many of those schools. Now, some of them this past year did not increase, so we're redoubling our efforts. But again, remember, these are very difficult communities to go into. Feel very good about it. I think we'll have good results to show at the end of this quadrennium.
Well, thank you for that explanation. And we're out of time, but best wishes on a great school year, and can't wait to have you back on Capital Journal.
Can't wait to get back. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal Podcasts.
Joining me next is Chris Isaacson, President and CEO of the Alabama Forestry Association. Chris, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Todd, thank you. Great privilege.
Well, could you remind our audience about the Forestry Association and its role here in the state?
Sure. Forestry Association was formed back in 1949, and our members formed us at that time to make sure there was somebody waking up every day thinking about, how to promote the industry. We're a membership organization that ranges from the stump to the mill, loggers all the way through all the mills, landowners, and our role is to advocate on behalf of the forestry community.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is I know y'all recently had this Hooked on Conservation event down in Escambia County. I hated that I didn't get to go. It just kind of wasn't able to. But exposing kids to conservation, natural resources, in this case fishing. Mm-hmm. Tell me about this event and how it came about.
Well, we, our role is to advocate. The way we advocate is we educate. And we saw the opportunity to bring together a group of public agencies, departments, and a lot of our members and other organizations to promote conservation, to promote Alabama's natural resources. Mm-hmm. We met with Senator Greg Albritton, and he agreed to host that. So we just kind of put the sweat equity behind it to put it together. But it would not have been possible had it not been for all the other organizations, the Alabama Association of Rural RC&D Councils, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the Department of Ag and Industries, Forestry Commission. One group that was there that really was the kids really enjoyed, it was the Major League Fishing Anglers Association. So we had professional fishermen down there that were working with the kids, showing them how to fish, talking to them. So it was a really, really neat event. And it was an opportunity for us to showcase our state and the resources we have. Todd, we've got an incredible story to tell about Alabama and Alabama's natural resources. And from our perspective, Alabama's forest and the industry that's grown up around us. So it was just a great opportunity to educate the kids, expose them, bring together all of these groups, and just promote awareness of the resources that we have and how we all collectively are working to conserve those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun, and fun for this generation of kids that are addicted to screens. Get off the screens and go out and fish. I understand you've got some other events like this planned.
Well, we utilize events like this to bring people together and to tell our story. And in this case, we were focused on kids, giving them opportunity to learn about the resources, to fish. There's other grassroots events where we bring people together for many of the same purposes. We have one event or one tour we call Back to Blue, where we will facilitate basically a lunch to honor the first responders. And usually the public officials, just like Senator Albritton did for Hooked on Conservation, public officials in the area will sponsor that, and we'll pull those together. We'll pull a lot of our members together to help with those events. And again, part of the issue, in addition to showing appreciation, is just to promote Alabama's natural resources and Alabama's forestry and forest products industry. We have one event. And I'm going to do a little shameless promotion here.
Oh, go right ahead.
But we've got one of our staff members has written several books, but one of them's called Lucy Meets a Logger. And one of the things that we realized is that we needed to start educating kids much younger, and than we have in the past. So we wrote these books. We call it the Tiny Timber Crew series.
Can I see it here?
Sure, absolutely. the Tiny Timber Crew series. And the idea is not only to talk about Alabama's natural resources and forestry, but kind of to leverage that we're talking about the jobs that are available in those. And so we'll invite a public official to come into a classroom to read to the kids. We'll bring a lot of our folks together. We call it the Lucy Tour. Actually, right now, since we got multiple books now, we'll call it the Tiny Timber Crew Tour. But again, just to bring more exposure to the incredible resources we have, the incredible forest we have in the state. So that's another grassroots event, and we have others, but those are two that that we're going to have ongoing through the rest of the year.
Well, we talk a lot about, you mentioned jobs, and we talk a lot about workforce development on this show. Particularly when it comes to the workforce participation rate, trying to connect people with jobs, breaking down barriers to employment. And I know that y'all have got a program going on right now about helping folks explore and earn a credential in forestry. Tell me about that and how it's going.
Okay, well, just a little quick background, we realized in responding to a lot of the questions and concerns voiced by our members that forest products companies were having a really hard time finding workers. So we sat back and said, what can we do? We had the opportunity to work with the State Department of Education. They invited us to create a forest worker credential. And that is one of the options that students in high schools around the state have to earn credit toward graduation. And so we put together a forest worker credential. That's taught by, we train the teachers how to teach it in the background. We support it. We developed many videos, many hours of videos, a lot of support material, and then we support the teachers as they teach that in their classes. And those are usually electives that are offered for the kids who are interested. Of course, our goal through that is not only to educate them about forest resources, but also to get them interested in forest-related jobs. And so our perspective in that was forest products industry is a rural industry. Rural Alabama, particularly in South Alabama, the forest industry is, a huge part of the rural economy in South Alabama. And a lot of times these kids, even who lived under the smokestack of the mills that were there, weren't aware of the really good paying jobs that were available to them. So our objective has been to target those schools in the rural parts of the state, make kids aware, not just kids, but others who might be interested in working, make them aware of these career opportunities, plug them into the training or education that they need, and then if that training or education doesn't exist, then we'll create it. So we're doing that under we formed a 501c3 Forest Workforce Training Institute, and we branded the program under Forestry Works. And it has become of such interest to other states in the country that we are now working with about 10 other states across the country to help them kind of pick up and leverage the work that we've done and do the same thing in their states.
Interesting. Wow. Well, congratulations on that. It sounds really interesting. You mentioned growing up. You're talking to a guy who grew up in Prattville. My dad worked at the International Pay, what used to be Union Camp, so very familiar with the smokestacks and what that all means for a community. Chris, we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll look forward to having you back on.
That was my pleasure. Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
The world World War II-era Tuskegee Airmen were the first African-American pilots in U.S. military service. Because Tuskegee was the only training facility for black pilots in the United States during World War II, potential pilots came from all over the country. The first African-American flying unit was the 99th Fighter Squadron, which deployed in the spring of 1943. The 99th earned a Distinguished Unit Citation, flying missions against enemy targets over Italy. The second flying unit, the 332nd Fighter Group, flew several successful bomber escort missions throughout the war. Its P-51 fighters had distinctively painted red tails, earning the unit and its planes the nickname Red Tails. In 1948, President Truman issued an executive order mandating the racial integration of all military services. The way was paved by the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, and in 2007, President Bush collectively awarded them a Congressional Gold Medal.
Joining me next is Capital Journal reporter and producer Karen Goldsmith. And Karen, while I am so pleased to have you at the desk, I wish it was for better reasons. You are leaving APT after 12 years. So we are so sorry to see you go, but it's the end of an era.
It is, and I think I'm more sorry to go, and I'm about to start crying already. I don't want to do this, but I love it here.
Well,
I love you guys, and I love everybody else. Just get to the top. I can't.
Okay.
It's too much. I can't.
It's okay. Well, look, I wanted to highlight, I mean, you ever since you, I guess, announced on Facebook that you were leaving, I got so many texts and emails, where's she going? What's going on? and why? And everything. And worried about us. Like, what are we going to do? Which is a legit worry. But that just speaks to the impact you've had here in the state reporting for these 12 years. And before that on radio and in the public policy arena. Everybody knows you. Everybody trusts you in your reporting. And so I think that's quite a legacy. I wanted to just really highlight that and say thank you for.
Well, thank you for saying that, because that's what's most important to me, that I have. Oh my gosh, I brought this on purpose. That I have integrity, and that I'm trustworthy, and especially have lawmakers trust you, because that's a very special relationship. To, as Senator Elliott loves hearing me say, to my 35 upstairs, to have the trust of our state leaders and our grassroots. People out there who every day come walk these halls fighting for their causes. That's most important to me, that I leave a legacy of trust. So, yeah.
I was curious if, specifically to APT, over these 12 years, is there any one story that sticks out or one issue that sticks out in terms of one of your favorites to cover?
You know the answer to that, Todd.
I think I do, yeah.
And the answer is that
budgets.
Budgets. I love covering the budgets. I really do. And I don't know why. I think it started when I was at Alabama State University, the way they taught math to me and stats, because actually my degree is in psychology, which is a whole nother conversation. But the way they taught it to me made me fall in love with math and numbers. So coming here and seeing how our state budgets are put together, how that money is put to use, and seeing all the thought that goes into it really fascinates me. But our former host, Don Daly, can tell you, I always say I love every story. I'm always like, oh, this is my favorite story every week, because I'm so passionate about the things that we do here for the people of Alabama. Yeah.
Well, and one thing viewers don't know about maybe some behind the scenes is that it's not just y'all's packages, but all the little clips and things that come from the legislature. You're providing an explanation basically of here's what this clip means. And and especially when it comes to budgets, yours are so much appreciated because these are really complicated and giant budgets sometimes, and to have dollars and cents written down and say, oh, okay, so somebody like me is not very good at math. That's very much appreciated. So yeah, you're kind of the budget hog.
Thank you. And what I try to do is make it real. How does this impact the everyday person? That's always my approach. And I remember when I spoke to a group of students at Auburn University about what we do here, that's what I told them. Make your stories relatable and real. Yes, about budgets and numbers, but what does this mean to the student in the classroom? What does this mean to the person who's going to need Aaliyah to come and save them when they're on the side of the road? So make it realistic, and that takes some of the scary part about the numbers away, some of the intimidating parts about the numbers. Yeah.
Right. And this may not be the end of your journalism career. Who knows? You never know. But I know y'all are moving to Atlanta, correct?
Yes, my husband, Kenny, received a promotion, and he has had several opportunities for promotions in the past, and he's turned them down because of my career. He didn't want to take away from me. And I told him earlier this year, and I see that God was listening. I said, if you get another opportunity, don't turn it down. I will support you and move with you. And on June 1st, that became reality. So, yeah, he got a promotion, so we're moving to Atlanta. And our dog also, Mr. Eli Manning Goldsmith. That's how you know why he's named Eli Manning.
Giants, New York Giants.
New York Giants fan. So, yeah, the dog, Kenny, and I are moving to Atlanta.
Well,
so, yeah.
Well, congratulations, not only on to Kenny and all that. It's new beginnings, but congratulations on an awesome career and a meaningful career here at Alabama Public Television. You've taught me a lot as I've come in to
I've
be
learned a
the
lot
host.
from you. You're a genius at this. People don't know it. And I will tell people, the support you give APT is not in vain. When we talk about integrity, the way they treat us, it can't be matched.
Well,
so thank you to our viewers who stopped me at the doctor's appointments and gas stations and public bathrooms and grocery stores to discuss our stories. I love our viewers, and I thank them for that. And just keep supporting APT and my guys here, Rod, John, Randy, you, especially my little brother Rod. My photo, we're so close up in here, just 5 of us, and I really appreciate it.
Well,
and I better stop talking about having the makeup on.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you, and you will certainly be missed but never replaced.
Thank you. I love you guys.
Before we go tonight, we have to acknowledge that it's the beginning of college football season, and so everybody's getting in the spirit. You see me with my college colors. Karen has her ASU button. So everybody's getting in the college football spirit. That includes Governor Kay Ivey, who, from the sound of it, is getting into the spirit herself. That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be right back next week with more Capital Journal at the same time, right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.